Join us now to talk about this horrible crime and recent events overseas, and the criminal perspective on that is a current criminal defense attorney, a former prosecutor, Dan Hochheiser, who checks in from Newsmax, New York. Daniel, we always thank you for your time. We should point out...
Good morning, JD. Good morning, Miranda.
Sir.
Good morning.
Good to have you. Dan, we should point out Stone remains at large. You have to consider him armed and dangerous, but when he is captured, what comes next?
Well, when he's captured, hopefully he's captured alive. He'll be charged, he'll be indicted, he'll face a trial. But a lot of these situations don't end with capturing a suspect alive. A lot of times they will die at the time they encounter the police.
Dan, he's a trained military man. What options would you say that law enforcement have when it comes to capturing him?
Law enforcement has to be extremely careful when they finally do encounter him. And remember, there's no guarantee that they'll catch him. Hopefully they will catch him. But if they do encounter him, and if I had to bet, I would say that he won't be taken alive. He's obviously a nut who's killed people, allegedly. But if law enforcement encounters this person, unless he has his hands straight up in the air, I'm afraid that we may...
Reports are saying, given his background in the military and being overseas, this is really post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD. Assuming he survives, assuming he goes to trial, you spend time as defense attorney, do you believe that he would mount some sort of PTSD defense?
Traumatic stress disorder to base the insanity defense on, but it's going to be, those insanity defenses are always very difficult to establish, and courts are very resistant and apprehensive about permitting those defenses to go to the jury unless there's really good expert testimony to provide a basis for it.
Dan, if you can, explain the legalities behind using the insanity defense. Because you described him as being nuts, but there are some clear lines drawn between someone being nuts and being insane.
Let me first clarify something. Obviously, if the allegations against him are true, he appears to be nuts. If he's innocent, then perhaps he's not. But from what I know so far, when you kill 6 people like this, being family members, you know, he seems to not be playing with a full deck. But the insanity defense basically is a defense which says, jury, this person should not be convicted of a crime because he did not understand the nature or the consequences of his actions at the time of the killing.
Dan, let's switch gears and move overseas to Australia, where that hostage situation turned deadly. The gunman who took the hostages killed, along with 2 of those hostages. We understand that law in Australia may differ from what happens here in the United States, but if a situation almost exactly the same were to happen here, would it be considered a crime, kidnapping, or would it be considered an act of terror, quite possibly an act of war?
Some and perhaps all of the above. This was an interesting, obviously terrible, tragic hostage situation, which included 2 hostages dying and then the hostage taker also dying. But in terms of this situation, you have this lone wolf who is very difficult to deal with because we don't know if he's connected to any organization. One of his demands was that he wanted to broadcast a statement saying that this was an ISIS-sponsored hostage taking. But we don't know if he has any connection to ISIS, and he seems to be some kind of lone wolf who just took matters into his own hands and wanted to promote some kind of radical Islamic statement and speak to the Australian Prime Minister.
Dan, we're hearing reports that the NYPD is ramping up its police presence due to the hostage standoff in Sydney. Do you think that's necessary?
About a minute remains, Dan.
Yes, I mean, I think one thing that the NYPD understands, and a lot of our government officials understand, but a lot of the public doesn't, is that we as a world, the West, is in the middle of World War III against fundamental Islamic terrorism. And you're seeing examples in Australia, you're seeing examples all over the world, and unless we beef up security and do serious counter-terrorism surveillance to prevent these attacks before they happen, which is much more difficult with a lone wolf because they don't do much reconnaissance before these attacks, we're going to have a lot of problems. But the NYPD is well equipped and they're doing a great job. Daniel
Hochheiser, criminal defense attorney, former prosecutor. Sir, we thank you for your time. We always appreciate your insights. Mighty serious discussion there. You heard Dan characterize it as World War III, this fight against international terror that, of course, has visited our shores as well. Do you agree with him? Why don't you tweet me your comments on that at Newsmax TV, hashtag America's Forum. There's also newsmaxtv.com/comment. And don't forget Facebook. You find us at facebook.com/Newsmax. We're coming back following this Newsmax Now.